And at the time, opiates was something, even though he'd had years of problematic drug use, opiates was something he'd never really messed with. He just kind of, there was kind of a line there. And I think he had some fear around those things. And he did start to use opiates. And really within 2 months, um, he was dead. So the thing about my son's death that really made me change my mind, particularly on legalization, is that we anticipated, this was in 2019, that his death was the result of a supply contaminated with fentanyl. But after the autopsy, it was discovered that there was no fentanyl in his system. And in fact, there was not a lethal amount of any uh, illicit substance in his system. What killed my son is that he used with a friend and he didn't feel well and told his friend he wanted to leave. And when he went outside, he passed out. And it was a night where it got to 19 degrees, which in Southeast Mississippi is really never happened and really cold. And so the people in that house, they had a choice to make, right? We can call 911. Are we all going to go to jail? Because here's this guy, he came over, used drugs, I sold him, and he's passed out in my driveway. So they chose not to call 911. And ultimately, my son died of hypothermia. That is what killed him. So in having to work through that, I had to reevaluate, are the laws that we have in place, and we have a law in place called Parker's Law in Mississippi, which is a homicide law, drug-induced homicide law. Are they helpful, right? If it were more known, if it was more out, and we also had to have a Good Samaritan law in Mississippi, though, right? So ideally, if you call and someone is overdosed on your property, there shouldn't be any charges. But uh, in my thinking, and it took me a long time to get here because, man, did I want vengeance on that kid for not calling 911. But what finally occurred to me is that if we had a legalized, regulated market, my son was probably he'd still misusing drugs. But there would have been a framework where the people that he used with, the people he associated with, understood that they could call 911. They're probably much more likely to have access to Narcan if that were the case. And that my son would still be alive. So that, I think prior to that experience, I did believe in decriminalization. I thought that was a good thing. But it really wasn't until that experience that I understood exactly how dangerous, really, and backwards our prohibition model is. And this is one of the extreme cases that can come from that model. So that's my backstory.
I'm really sorry, Jane.
No, thank you.
Well, and so, as you talked about earlier, this drug addiction is not just a problem that you sort of have in bad families, right?
Right.
It's something you've experienced yourself. But I, of course, even if it was, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have compassion for people who are struggling with drug addiction. But I think that, there was a Black comedian, African American comedian one time who said something like, when they say that drugs are an epidemic, that means white people are doing them.
Right.
Right. But the sense of the fact that this is not, as much as we may want to sort of look at people who struggle with drug addiction and see them a certain way. In a lot of cases, we may not always know it yet, but they could be, our family or our friends or our neighbors. And so it's more, we should treat it, maybe we should see it as more personal than maybe we do at times.